Parents, I'm here with a porta crib in the background to give you all the language milestones your pediatrician didn't give you, part 2. In part 1, we talked all about expected word counts, but you may have noticed that a toddler's developing language skills includes more than just words. Between the ages of 1 and 3, we're looking for language growth in a few areas. But before we continue, if you don't know me, I'm Maura. I'm an SLP with Rooted in Language, and we specialize in helping parents and educators facilitate the development of strong language and literacy skills in their kids. Okay, so broadly speaking, little kiddos develop language skills across 2 subdomains: expressive language skills and receptive language skills. Expressive is what they produce themselves to communicate, either verbally or through gestures. And there are different levels of expression, like imitation versus independent. And then there's receptive language, which is what children understand. Typically, toddlers understand a lot more than they can express. Okay, so as I've said before, parents and professionals generally look to statistically significant developmental norms to determine if a child is developing on track. But last year, in 2022, the CDC updated their developmental guidelines, and across the board, developmental specialists like PTs and SLPs were pretty disappointed in the sandbagging that occurred across these norms, by which I mean the minimum expectation for language skills at each age bracket were way reduced. Why is this a problem? From a speech pathology perspective, when we reduce the expectation in this critical period of development, i.e. birth to 3 years of age, it all but ensures a corresponding decrease in the early identification of language delay and struggle. You get me? And FYI, the CDC benchmarks are a common resource that peds use to evaluate your child's progress at their well visits. And that's not a slam on pediatricians, I'm just here to provide further education. But it's kind of a slam on the CDC. So today, I'm going to give you the breakdown of the CDC recommendations compared to previously accepted milestones based on years of developmental research. Take note of the norms set forth by both, and then consider where your child falls within these expectations. So here are your expressive and receptive language norms for toddlers by age. And as I talk through these, I'm going to put some helpful charts on the screen. I suggest you screenshot, crop, and save for later reference. Just thank me later. At 12 months, the CDC expects that your child waves bye-bye, calls a parent mama or dada or other name, understands no, and responds appropriately. And the former 12-month milestones: understands a simple command with gestures, says a few words, average 3 to 5, looks at or points to familiar items when named, tries to imitate sounds, points to or reaches toward wanted items, and babbles with inflection. Here's your 12-month chart and my screenshot face. At 15 months, the CDC expects that your child tries to say 1 to 2 words besides mama or dada, looks at a familiar object when named, follows directions when a gesture is paired with words, and points to request. Whereas the former milestones expected tries to imitate words, says 3 to 5 words besides mama or dada, uses jargon, which is speech-like strings of sounds, identifies 1 to 2 body parts, and identifies at least 1 familiar object or action in a book. 15-month chart. At 18 months of age, the CDC only expects that your child can say at least 3 words besides mama or dada and can follow a 1-step direction, whereas previous expectations for 18 months included imitates words consistently, says at least 10 words with the average being 50 or more, uses words and gestures to communicate, answers basic WH questions, mostly what questions, points to a few named objects in a book, and protests by shaking head no or saying no. 18 months. At 2 years, the CDC expects your child to point to things in a book when you ask where is questions, says 1 2-word combo like more juice, points to at least 2 body parts when asked, uses more gestures than just waving and pointing. Former 2-year milestones, I think you see where this is going, says at least 50 words with the average being 300 or more, uses 2-word combos frequently, names familiar objects frequently, starts to ask and answer basic questions like, what that? Follows a simple 2-step command, and understands basic verbs like eat, sleep, play, throw. 2-year chart. And lastly, at 2.5 years, the CDC expects your child to say about 50 words, say 2 or more words with 1 being an action word like mommy, run, name things in a book when you point and ask, what's that? And start to say pronouns like I, me, and we. And the former 2.5-year milestones uses hundreds of words, may have upwards of 1,000 or more, says 2 to 4 word combos, which are really more like phrases at this point, asks and answers what and where questions like where daddy, understands and uses many pronouns like I, my, mine, me, you, consistently points to and names objects and actions in books and pictures, and understands 2 to 3 step commands. 2.5-year chart. So I always encourage parents to seek out more information from specialists if you're ever concerned. Compare to peers, look for resources for home intervention strategies, get evaluated, and register for early intervention services sooner rather than later if your gut is telling you that something's off. Now that you have some solid language development info, get tracking. And for more expert guidance on language and literacy, hit that follow.